All right, welcome back, everybody, to Two Ball, Two Bold. We are on episode 3, part 2, where we are talking about the AFC East and the AFC North.
Defense.
For the defensive side. I'm Marshon Parker.
And I'm Nathan Tomlin. And just to kind of go over for those of you that haven't tuned into the last few episodes, for defense, we're doing 5 positions. Edge defender, interior defensive line, off-ball linebacker, corner, and safety. We're picking one from each position for each franchise in the NFL. So today we're doing the AFC East and the AFC North. And it's based on their time with that franchise. So for me, we're going to start with the AFC East. We're going to start with New England, the Patriots. It's interesting. So I'm going to go with a couple right off the top. I'm going to go start with secondary because those were a little easier for me.
Okay.
Corner, I'm going with Ty Law, although I'm going to shout out they've had a lot of good corners over the last 20 years of the Belichick era, right? Gilmore had Defensive Player of the Year.
Yes.
Asante Samuel had a couple good years for him as well, but I did go with Ty Law. Safety, I went with Lawyer Malloy. I went with him over Rodney Harrison, longer career. And honestly, Rodney Harrison, when you look at him, his best years were on the Chargers.
Agree with that.
I think Lawyer Malloy takes the safety there. Linebacker was interesting. I went with Teddy Bruschi at linebacker, but they do have a lot of guys that you could take at linebacker. And I do want to shout out Nick Bonaconti from a long time ago, but the game was very different. And
yes,
Teddy Bruschi, of course, was kind of the heart and soul of that defense of that first Patriots dynasty with the 3 championships.
Mm-hmm.
Now, edge and defensive interior is where, to me, it gets a little interesting. There's 4 guys I want to talk about. Okay, and one guy could be at either position, and so we'll talk about that. But for interior defense, I had Vince Wilfork or Richard Seymour. Now, Richard Seymour was technically a defensive end in a 3-4. So, but he wasn't a traditional edge. He really wasn't a sack master. Richard Seymour is a Hall of Famer. Vince Wilfork
should be.
I think he should too. Yeah. That man was a load in the middle.
Yes.
And they played together, which is crazy. And then for edge, again, depending on how we want to go about this with Vince Wilfork in the middle, if you slide Seymour out to the edge. The other 2 edge rushers I wanted to talk about were Willie McGinnis, mostly for his postseason though.
Yeah.
And Andre Tippett.
Good one.
Some combination of those 4, and really it depends on where you put Seymour. Because I do think if you put Seymour at the edge, I think we got to have him at the edge. I think he edges Tippett and McGinnis, and that puts Wilfork in the middle. But if we go with Seymour interior, then between Tippett and McGinnis, I would actually go with Tippett. I think he had a better career than McGinnis. Again, McGinnis was that postseason guy, but I think Tippett had a better overall regular season career than McGinnis. So anyway, that's who I had for defense. So. The edge and the interior defense, we can definitely discuss, see where you're at with that, and kind of go from there.
So I was in the same ballpark. I mean, Willie McGinnis, the postseason sack numbers are the first thing you think about. But Willie McGinnis was there for the beginning of the dynasty. He was also there during the heart of the Drew Bledsoe years when they made the first Super Bowl run against the Packers. Extremely productive. I think he was the first round pick the year before, or maybe year after Drew Bledsoe.
I think it was after Bledsoe.
Yeah. No, you're right, because Parcells drafted him. But I went with and see this is going to be an interesting conversation because I was basically in the same way that you were. I had Willie McGinnis as the edge rusher. I had Vince Wilfork as the kind of primary interior guy, but I put Richard Seymour there because he was a 3-4 defensive end. His sack numbers were good for a 3-4 defensive end, but when you run a 3-4 defense, especially the way they run it, you are more of an
really
interior,
3 D tackles.
Basically,
it's really not.
Yeah. And I mean, goodness gracious, that's a hard decision to make.
I mean, Richard Seymour's
he's a Hall of Famer, and he was still even productive on the Raiders later on some bad Raider teams, but But I don't know. Vince Wilfork is one though. He's like the quintessential numbers don't tell the story guy.
Oh, absolutely. You couldn't move him.
You couldn't.
You couldn't move
him. And that's just going to change how you run up the middle. I had
and
Teddy
back then,
Bruschi
too,
as well.
Teams ran.
When actually you ran the ball, right? Teddy Bruschi, I looked for
the most unathletic looking football player.
Well, he was a DN in college, right?
Yeah.
He was on that Desert Storm defense for Arizona.
Yeah.
And being on the West, because me and my cousin were big fans of them. And it's like, how is this going to work in the NFL? He's short. Like, I don't think he's going to be able to be a productive and then moving the middle linebacker. And he was super smart. I remember the playoff game against the Colts where he basically just started calling out everything and kind of frustrated Peyton Manning. Came back from, was it leukemia or cancer?
I can't remember.
But whatever it was a serious. He came back from that.
He's an analyst, a pretty good analyst too.
He's a really good analyst as well. Ty Law. I mean that. But I'll tell you what's funny about what you said. They have had a lot. Revis was there for a year. Now he couldn't be on this, but I mean just the fact that like those defenses. I think people really think about the defensive lines and the linebackers, things like that. But Belichick always made sure he kept very good corners, even if he kept them for a short time. Like when they had Revis, they had Brown. Was it Browner? The big guy from the Seahawks.
For a year or two.
For a year or two, then he kind of washed out. But
big corner. He's like 6'3" corner.
Big guy, 6'3", 220, I think he was. But I had Rodney Harrison, but I don't really have a problem with Lawyer Malloy. Lawyer Malloy was, he was good. I mean, he was really good. That's why it was such a big surprise when Belichick let him go and he ended up on the Bills. So I think either way, and I think you made a good point that Lawyer Malloy is known more as a Patriot, whereas Rodney Harrison, even with the Super Bowl, is probably more known for.
They played a year together, I think, actually, too, believe it or not. But look, to me, Lawyer Malloy, he was there longer.
Yeah.
Right? I think he was on that team that went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Packers. Or it was right after that. But he's right around there.
He was right around that time.
But I think he had better years as a Patriot than Rodney Harrison had. That's why I went Lawyer Malloy.
I can think that. What are we going to do with the defenses?
So this is what I'm going to say. If you had Wilfork as the interior, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I think Seymour edges out McGinnis, and we push Seymour out to the edge.
Really?
Yeah, I do, man. I do. Because, look, man, to me, Willie McGinnis is one of those players that, like, all due respect to him, right? During the regular season, average, slightly above average. He was never one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. Never. In terms of, when you were talking about the best edge rushers at the time, whenever any part during his career, Willie McGinnis did not come up. Willie McGinnis is one of those guys that elevated his game so much in the postseason, right? Like, to me, it's just different. It's not like a great player that becomes even more like Tom Brady's great during the regular season.
So you like Julian Edmonds? You think of Julian?
Like Julian Edmonds? Yeah, Julian Edmonds is. I mean, maybe he made a Pro Bowl or two, but not many because he was never. You would never consider Julian Edelman a great receiver.
Yeah,
but he elevated his game in the postseason. Now, part of that is Tom Brady too, obviously receiver, but that's how I think of Willie McGinnis. Like. Richard Seymour was a Pro Bowler and All-Pro.
I agree.
And in that conversation every year he's one of the best defensive linemen in football.
I agree. I guess the only reason I'm questioning is because
he's not
Willie
a pure
McGinnis
edge.
is an edge rusher.
Right.
Like there's no question about that.
But I mean,
we're taking some liberties. But I mean,
we did with the Raiders too.
We did.
We
did that.
Okay,
I'm cool with it. We did. And listen, let's be honest. We're gonna take some more liberties moving forward.
We are.
This is our show. So
it's tough, man. It's tough because Richard Seymour's all famer. Vince Wilfork should be.
Yes.
Because to your point, he's like a Jamal Williams, but he was better longer. Jamal Williams was 3-4 years. On the Chargers where he was just an immovable object. Vince Wilfork was that for almost a decade in New England, and then a couple of years in Houston because he's from that area.
Yes,
and he went back and retired there. So
man, if he gets how many? Goodness gracious! When he eventually gets in, like how many Hall of Famers were on that 2001 University.
Just the defense?
The Miami team, University of Miami team.
Oh God, I'd have to look and see
That's-
because you'd have to look back. They had guys that didn't even play that ended up being in the Hall of Fame.
I mean,
You know what I mean? Like we'd have to look at that roster.
Frank Gore's getting in.
He's going to be one of those.
Reggie Wayne will get in.
Yeah. Reggie Wayne will eventually get in.
Yeah.
Frank Gore is one of those longevity arguments, right? Never one
Yeah.
of the best.
Yeah.
Never top 5 running back in the NFL.
I would argue he's had.
I don't know, man. He didn't have
Now,
very many Pro Bowls,
and
they took 3
I'm
running backs per conference.
Yeah,
you know, and I get you a little homer.
Yeah.
I like Frank Gore.
Yeah, I
he was
do too.
tough. He was reliable.
Yeah.
But he was never a. Oh my God.
He wasn't. He
was a good, very good player for a very long time. Those guys do make the Hall.
He wasn't Adrian Peterson. He
Correct.
wasn't LaDainian Thomas.
If he played 3-4 less years, he doesn't make it. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Where
I do
Adrian
agree.
Peterson doesn't play those last 3 years, he's a Hall of Famer.
I agree.
LaDainian Thomas doesn't play the last 3 years, he's a Hall of Famer.
I do agree with
a little
that.
bit different, but yeah, that could be a conversation for another day.
Now we'll go with I'll go with the Jets.
Okay.
Okay. So, I honestly I found the Jets to be one of the easier teams.
Mm-hmm.
So interior defensive line, obviously Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
Edge rusher Mark Gastineau, who was a maniac.
Mm-hmm.
Middle linebacker, the off-ball linebacker. Listen, the guy who's responsible for us getting Tom Brady, Mo Lewis. he was trying to kill Drew Bledsoe. Darrelle Revis. I think that's like one of the biggest slam dunks ever. And I don't know, safety. I picked Victor Green.
Cool.
I mean, he was a good player. Not great, but he was a good player. But when you look at the Jets' history, they don't have. I mean, I wasn't going to put Ronnie Lott.
No,
because Ronnie Lott was only there for a cup of coffee. Granted, he was a Pro Bowler. He was a Pro Bowler when he was there.
I think he was a Pro Bowler by name at that point because he was
probably
he was not Ronnie Lott.
Do you know okay,
you know what I mean?
Where do you think he ended his career?
Man, I don't remember.
Chiefs.
But he didn't play much on there, did he? Did he
Chiefs
play
in
the
his
whole
career.
season?
I don't remember. I just it's like one of those weird like he's still doing the Chiefs.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what's your opinion?
Cool. I had all 5 same.
There we go.
The one thing I do want to say is if Sauce Gardner has about 4 years like he's been,
he's not topping Darrelle Revis.
Dude, look. All I'm saying is, Sauce Gardner has only been in the league 2 years. So now the problem the Jets have had is when they get elite talent, they get out.
Yeah.
Right? They don't keep them.
Yeah.
Right? So if he ends up leaving after his rookie contract and a franchise tag, which will inevitably happen if he doesn't sign a long-term contract.
Unless they just trade him. But
So he's playing 5 years maybe in the Jets.
Yeah.
If he does sign an extension and he plays at this level, because you got to assume he's going to get better.
Yeah.
Okay.
You would assume.
He'll overtake Darrelle Revis. He will, because his first 2 years are better than Darrelle Revis' first 2 years.
That is a steam and hot.
But also because Darrelle Revis had about 5 years, and then he got injured. Remember, he got hurt, and then he left. They got rid of him. He went. Did he go to New England first? He went to New England.
He was Tampa first.
Tampa, then New England, then Kansas City. Right, and he had some good years at those places too. But as a Jet, I'm not saying necessarily Sauce Gardner in 5 more years is better than Darrelle Revis' career.
Okay,
but as a Jet, yes, because Darrelle Revis was a lockdown on that team, and that team had a defense. They went to the AFC Championship game with Mark Sanchez. Yeah, was it 09 or was it 10? It was one of those. But
he was
But that's my point. He was drafted in 07. So his first 2 years were not as good. Sauce Gardner's the first team All-Pro 2 years in a row to start his career.
Yeah.
And they don't even throw the ball at him. He doesn't get the ball thrown at him.
True.
Already, and it's his second year. Now, granted, the Jets, we'll see this year when they actually have an offense if Rodgers can stay healthy.
Yeah.
But before, you didn't even have to throw the ball against the Jets because you could just play keep away because the Jets couldn't score a point.
Correct.
So I get it. Like, it is different. But teams don't challenge Sauce, dude. They don't challenge him now. And he's bigger than Revis. Much taller. I don't know if he's thicker.
He's not thicker, but he's
taller.
6'3", about 6'3".
I don't know. Yeah, 6'3" maybe. He's
tall.
Tall
and long arms.
And he's good. So that I just wanted to throw that out there.
I'm gonna that hot take. I'm gonna hold on to that, and I'm gonna.
But I mean, he has to stay on the trajectory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you kind of saved yourself when you said if he stays on the Jets.
Yeah,
because Revis became a maverick. It was like, who's gonna pay me the most?
Exactly, because that is what ends up ends up being with the Jets with every good player they ever have.
Yeah,
In the last 20 years anyway.
The only one except Curtis Martin. Curtis Martin was there forever.
Yeah, but I mean, he was also on the Patriots
for a couple years.
And the Jets were pretty good then. It's just they were never the best team in the division. Okay.
Who's next?
So I'm gonna go with Miami.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with the Dolphins. The Dolphins have had. I mean, they have obviously very good history.
Mm-hmm.
And they were pretty easy for me too, to be honest. Edge, I had Jason Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive tackle, Bob Baumhauer.
Okay.
Middle linebacker, Zach Attack, man.
Oh,
Zach Thomas. Dude, I mean, is he in the Hall of Fame yet? Because if he's not, he needs to be. I think he is. I'm pretty sure he is.
I don't think he is.
He needs to be, because the only reason he's not considered the best middle linebacker of his era is Ray Lewis. Let's be real. You know what I mean? And then Urlacher. I mean, he was obviously well before Urlacher, but the beginning part of Zach Thomas's career was him and Ray Lewis.
Yeah.
And then the latter half, then you had Urlacher come in too. That was an absolute beast. But Zach Thomas. Corner, I have Sam Madison. And safety, this is where I was between two guys. Both a little bit older. I have Jake Scott or Dick Anderson, and I'm leaning to Dick Anderson because he's the first safety to win Defensive Player of the Year, and one of 5 safeties in NFL history to do so. So I went with Dick Anderson, but I'll listen to Jake Scott because he did have a longer career there. But both of them are excellent choices. But those were my 5 for Miami. But again, for Miami, for me, it was pretty easy. Other than safety, just kind of tossing between those two.
So I took some liberties. We were pretty much across the board, but in the interior, he was a defensive end, but he was more or less a 3-4 defensive end. I put Cameron Wake.
Nah, man.
Was he a 4-3?
Dude, he was a 4-3 end or a 3-4 outside linebacker at the end of his career. He was an edge rusher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he can't go into.
So I tried.
But just like Jason Taylor was a 4-3 end, and then they changed to a 3-4 and he stood
linebacker.
up.
I tried. Okay, so
honestly, I would take Baumhauer over Cameron Wake anyway. Cameron Wake had a couple peak years, but career.
Cameron Wake was
but
he came later because he played in the CFL.
Correct.
But
that may have hurt. But yeah, I can't give you interior line on him, man.
I tried. I told you, like
that one is too much of a
liberties will be taken.
He ended up standing up.
Yeah. I said liberties will be taken. Now, I had Jake Scott at the safety.
Yeah,
because the interceptions.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, granted.
Like I said, I'm fine with it. Like I think Jake Scott had a better career. Yeah. He had a longer career as a Dolphin than Dick Anderson, but I'm fine going with Jake Scott.
I'll tell you what's interesting though, is we talk about the evolution of football, and the ball's thrown more now, which is there's more sacks now. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the history, there was way more.
Well, yeah, but there also weren't sacks until '82.
True, that's true.
But there will be more sacks now because there's more.
But even say like the 90s and 80s is more sacks now. But if you look, like if you look at the interception leaders,
like the game was different because they call everything on defense.
Well,
now.
And guys like
Tom Brady just got interviewed on some guy's podcast with cutting his hair.
Yeah,
and he's like, every rule benefits the offense. He's like, the game is like as a defensive player. The only option you can do is bump a guy off. Yeah. Like, that's why Miami, how they utilize Tyreek Hill, they take advantage of the rules.
Yeah.
Because they moved Tyreek Hill before, so he's running full speed laterally.
Yeah.
You can't bump him.
Like
because if you're running with him laterally, he's faster than you. So he's going to get off the line fast. You can't bump him, and after 5 yards, you can't touch the guy.
Yeah.
You know? The interception numbers, I don't think there's ever going to be a guy that gets close to 60 again. Unless the rules change.
I don't see a guy getting 10
because corners aren't going to get that because if a corner's that good, they don't throw to him. You look at the better corners today, they don't get a lot. Sauce had no picks. Patrick Surtain had 2 last year, I think. Right? Those are 2 of the better young corners in the NFL. They don't throw them the ball. They go to the other side of the field. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, I'm fine with Jake Scott.
Okay. With that. So now we've got
it's Buffalo.
Wrap
up the East Buffalo. Yeah, the AFC East was pretty easy.
It was. I mean, so Buffalo for me. At Kyle Williams, interior.
Dude, he was there forever. He was a fan favorite too.
He was.
I mean, look, if there was one city that I could be born in just to be an NFL fan, it would be Buffalo.
Oh,
like
man.
their fan base is amazing.
It is, and you know they always have like crazy talent. They never get over the hump.
Yeah.
They always have crazy talent.
Ah, man,
and because even then they had the Williams brothers. Pat Williams plays that time too. Okay.
Yeah, but he had better years, I think, on the Vikings.
He did.
But yeah, Kyle was there for like 15 years,
He was
man.
there for a long time. Bruce Smith, obviously.
I don't know. You sure?
And then the Biscuit, Cornelius Bennett at linebacker. Now this might be where we differ. Nate Odom at corner. He was very productive. He was there for a long time. And a favorite of mine when I was a kid, probably because of his helmet and his playing style, but Mark Kelso.
Gotcha. Yeah. So secondary, I mean, they didn't have anyone that stuck out.
No.
You know, so corner, I went way old school, and I went with Butch Bird.
Jeez, you were the 70s?
Yeah. So I went with Butch Bird. Played there a long time.
Uh-huh.
And then it's actually I had the Birds in the defensive backfield. I went with Jarris Bird. Do you remember Jarris Bird?
I do.
He got off to an incredible start to his career. He had 9 interceptions his rookie year, and somehow did not win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Went to Brian Cushing. Blows my mind.
Cushing was a monster.
You led the league in interceptions as a safety.
Yeah.
And you don't win Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Remember how good Cushing was?
I do. But it's just, it just blows my mind. But anyway, that's who I went with. But I mean, I'm open to. We can go with Odom. Odom was my number 2 on corner.
I'm cool with going with Bird because
I'm good with. I did have Odom as number 2.
Yeah.
I just was looking at it. I was like, man, Bird had technically a better career, but it's so difficult that era. But I do think Bird the first like 4 or 5 years, man, he was unreal.
He was a ball hog.
He was unreal. And the thing is too, the last few years they've had Poyer and the safety they have.
Poyer and
I'm blanking on it, but they've had 2 good safeties the last few years.
I know they just got rid of Poyer.
Yeah, well, he is a free agent, and I'm blanking on it, but they've both been very good too. And a Bird, that beginning of that career though, to me was just nuts.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
All right, so we'll go to the AFC North.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to start with the bangers or end with the bangers?
I mean, geez, they're all.
Let's start with. I'll start with Cincinnati.
Okay.
Let's finish with Pittsburgh and Baltimore.
Okay.
Because those are, I think Pittsburgh has the best defense unit of any of them, personally. So we'll start with Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
Big D tackle in the middle, Geno.
Mm.
Great career. Whole career there, I think. I don't think he played anywhere else. He retired right before they got Burrow. So, he was on teams that made the playoffs, but was part of that Marvin Lewis 0 for 6. Would get there and lose.
Boom. Yeah.
Because they could never win the division, it seemed like. They'd always be a wild card, and it seemed like they always ended up playing Pittsburgh or Baltimore, too, which is kind of funny. But anyway, Geno Atkins at defense tackle. Edge, I went with the guy who they have had for 3 years, and is still there, and Trey Hendrickson, dude. Trey Hendrickson is nasty. I also went Dunlap for his length of time, but I look at it, and Trey Hendrickson in 3 years has like almost 40 sacks.
Mm-hmm.
He was second in the league, tied for second in the league in sacks last year.
Mm-hmm.
2 of the 3 years he had double-digit sacks, and in fact, not just double digits. I think he had 14.5 his first year there, and 16.5 last year, and something like 8 in between with some injuries. He's made two Pro Bowls, which is more than any other defensive end ever for Cincinnati in just 3 years, and he's still going to be there. The rest of the team was a little bit interesting. Linebacker, and I went with this guy just for the fear of God he put in you. Vontae's perfect, man. And I just went with it just because of when he was on the field.
Yeah.
That guy was as good of a middle linebacker as there was in the league during his time. The problem he had was he would always take it a little far.
Yeah.
He is the reason. Well, it seems worse because college is different. Because college, you can't say a word to a player.
Yeah.
They throw a flag. They've eased up a little bit, but it used to be, man. If you hit a guy hard in college, they throw you out.
Yeah.
he's a reason Antonio Brown is CTE. I mean, that hit is one of the most vicious hits. And then I'll never forget, who was the receiver that hit him back? Juju. Yeah, of all guys, too.
Yeah.
Juju Smith-Schuster just absolutely laid him out.
Yeah.
I did go with Burfict, but I'm open to hearing other guys there.
Yeah.
Corner, I went with Lamar Parrish. Again, corner, they had a lot of guys that were there and were all right, but no one that really stuck out to me. And then safety, I went with David Fulcher.
Okay.
Well, that one was a little bit more clear cut to me. But corner and linebacker to me there were a lot of guys that you could choose from. To me,
so I'm glad you went with Fulcher. First of all,
yeah.
Fulcher was huge.
Yeah.
He was like 6'3", 230.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that's a linebacker nowadays.
Yeah, he would be a middle linebacker now. And the only reason he's not is remember because he played on some of the Super Bowls. I think they went to Super Bowl twice. Mm-hmm. I know for a fact he was
to the Niners.
Yeah. Well,
was it the Redskins? The other one?
No, both times they lost the Niners.
Was it both times?
But I know he was on one of the Super Bowl teams. I don't know that he was on both of them. But he was.
I think he was.
He was the only reason I think he's not remembered more. Because, he probably would have been on, like, the all-'80s decade team, things like that. But you got Ronnie Lott. You got, Ken Easley. You have all these other guys that were also really, really good. But I had – that's interesting. For the defensive ends, and I'm willing to listen because I think I might have been trying to go back too far. And just because these are two guys I have a lot of respect for, and these are two guys that I think would be highly productive in today's NFL too. I didn't go too far back, but I had Carlos Dunlap or Justin Smith. Now I think because Carlos Dunlap
was just there for a long time.
He was good.
He was very good.
But Justin Smith honestly was better as a Niner.
Right.
Because he was on.
Not even close. Not even close. Justin Smith. If you're going to be between Justin Smith and Dunlap, it'd be Dunlap.
That's why I had
their peaks on the Bengals were similar.
Yeah.
And Dunlap just played there longer.
I'm willing to go with
Trey.
Yeah, with Trey.
The production level is
just. Is it Hendricks or Hendrickson?
Hendrickson.
That's what I thought.
The production level of Hendrickson, because remember he played 5 years on the Saints, and for 4 years, he played rotational.
Yeah.
And then that last year's 5th-year rookie contract deal, right? And I think he had like 12 and a half sacks.
But it bothers me. He doesn't wear gloves.
He blew up.
I hate that. Put some gloves on.
It looks weird with the long black sleeves too, and then really pale white hands. You think they'd be more tan on wearing gloves, although I guess there's snow and sun in Cincinnati. But yeah, I think just that production over those 3 years is just. I mean, he's only like 30 sacks behind Dunlap, and he's played like 9 less seasons. That's a big, you know what I mean? Like in 2 more years, 2 to 3 years, he could pass Dunlap.
I'm cool with that. Now linebacker, I had Takeo Spikes. Look, Burfict was great on SportsCenter.
Spikes was one of my 5 linebackers.
The only problem with Burfict was, he was slow, like 4.9 slow. Like he was terrible in coverage.
Yeah.
He was intimidating. He was a hard hitter. All those different things. And there's like something about him because he seems like more of a throwback guy. Like he might have been.
He would have been great in the 70s.
I was literally going to say they would have made statues of him in the 70s, right?
Yeah. And they would have all been legal hits.
Yeah. He would have been the guy I was watching as a kid on the VHS tapes, right? Yeah. But I had Takeo Spikes. I had Dave Fulcher. Now I had Ken Riley, even though I think Ken Riley was he more of a hybrid?
Kind of, but I had Riley on as my second corner.
Because I just look at it from a standpoint of if I'm running the defense, right? Who would I rather have, Takeo Spikes or?
No, I'm cool. I'm cool with Spikes. And
his neck was like as thick as my freaking thigh.
Yeah, he was nasty.
Goodness gracious.
He was nasty. We can go with Riley over Parrish. I had Riley as my second. So, it's up to you.
And then we'll have Hendrickson at D and the edge rusher, and then
Atkins. I had Atkins at D tackle. You didn't say D
tackle.
Look,
come on now. That was a given. I'm sorry. That's why I didn't even think. He was a maniac.
He was good.
So I'll go with the Browns now. Okay.
Yeah.
I found it to be pretty easy. Michael Dean Perry at interior defense. It's funny, him and William Perry are brothers, and more people think about William Perry, but Michael Dean Perry had a much better career.
Right.
It's just he didn't have a flashy middle nickname and didn't score a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Also didn't win a Super Bowl.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. You know, and then Myles Garrett, he's already there.
Oh,
Myles Garrett, he's there.
Year,
he's there, right? So he's and then Clay Matthews at linebacker.
Clay
Frank
Matthews,
Senior.
No,
the second.
Junior. It's
Junior, because the last is the third, right?
Yeah.
So Frank Minifield, and then a guy who at safety who my senior year in our game against our rival Antioch, the TV announcer compared me to Eric Turner. So I just had to throw that out there.
Is that why you picked him though?
No, he was great. He was great. He was a ball hawk. He was another guy that if he played now, he's a middle linebacker.
Yeah.
He's either a middle linebacker or in a Tampa 2.
Yeah.
Or potentially like a off ball, a weak side linebacker or something like that.
Yeah.
But he was really good. Died young. Was a Raider afterwards, but he was a really good Brown. Especially when you look at the Browns' history, when you look at their offense, it's like, geez Louise, like
they've got a lot of good running backs and a lot of good offensive linemen. If we were to pick
offensive linemen.
But yeah, the receivers and quarterbacks are bare. It's a bare cupboard. Which again, I mean, with the contract Deshaun Watson has, dude, if Deshaun can get back to where he was on Houston. It would take him if he. I don't see it either. I'm saying if he did, because he has legit receivers. They got Judy now too.
Well, but tell me. So I know this is way off topic, but I think it's in his head.
100%. You don't just try. He's too young. He didn't have an injury, so it is. I think he's. I think it is. It's like look at Tiger Woods, man.
Yeah.
After all that with Tiger Woods.
Once we found out he was a freak.
Well, it wasn't just that he was a freak. He was married doing that too. If he was single, I think it would have been a different conversation.
Well, but
still would have been
looked down. He was an image guy. He was an image guy.
Yeah. But that's my point. If he was single, it wouldn't have been as bad.
Yeah.
Than having a whole family. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. Myles Garrett was no brainer. Yeah. I mean, he's he could retire right now, and to be honest with you, I'd probably be okay with him being in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah.
Because since he's been in the league, he has been a top 3 or 4 defensive player.
Yes.
Not just edge rush defensive player. He plays against the run. That man, when you watch him in the NBA Celebrity All-Star Game, to see the athleticism for a man of that size is scary.
It's not fair.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Like, if I saw that man on the street, I would walk across. I would avoid him at all costs.
For no reason.
Just because I'd be like, first of all, if for some reason, like, I bumped him and he got mad, he'd squash my head.
Or if he was having a bad day.
Yeah. Or just walking by him, my ego would immediately dissipate because I would be like, this man is, his arm is bigger than my entire torso. And I'm a big guy. So, he's 100%. Michael Dean Perry, Clay Matthews Jr., who was really good, man.
Forever.
Dude, the Matthews family, God, man, because they have arguably, I mean, he's on a very short list of best centers to ever play. Bruce Matthews. Yeah. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. He played 20
center
years.
And guard, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, so interior lineman. But he's a Hall of Famer. That guy's insane. Yeah. And then Clay Matthews III had injuries, unfortunately, slowed his career down, but his beginning to his career was very good. I had Frank Minifield at corner, so I mean, this one was pretty easy for us to, I guess we agreed on this one. And then I had Tom Darden at safety, but I'm okay with Eric Turner because you know him, and apparently you look like him.
Apparently I hit like him.
Play the same
or at least I did, when I was 17 or whatever.
Yeah, I think you're making that up. I need a second.
I'll try to find the VHS tape.
Please.
See, I'm that old. The VHS tape, right?
Yeah, please. But we can go with Eric Turner. That's fine.
All right. So you're so who?
So I'll go. Do you want to go Pittsburgh? I'll go Pittsburgh.
I was
Pittsburgh.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
First.
No, go ahead. Go
Pittsburgh. Okay.
I think it would be funny.
Okay.
They'll both be funny.
I mean, Pittsburgh to me was a freaking no-brainer. I mean, which is nuts because it's a no-brainer. And they have Hall of Famers we're not even going to list on here.
Yes.
Like a lot of them. Pittsburgh, by far, has had the best, at least through the AFC, the best defensive players ever. If you could field the all-time Pittsburgh defense, I don't think they'd allow a point. I mean, it would
be ridiculous.
Their offense would have to turn it over. It's insane. Defensive tackle. Who do you think it is? I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Mean Joe Green.
Yeah.
Two-time Defensive Player of the Year. Right. He is on a very short list which does include the recently retired Donald as the greatest defensive tackle ever.
Mm-hmm.
Now the game was different; they didn't count sacks back then, so it's really kind of hard to see exactly. You can't look at stats to really compare him and Donald, but I mean, he won 2 of the first 4 Defensive Player of the Years that were out there. I mean, Pittsburgh as a team won like 6 of the first 8, something like that. Okay, but it's Mean Joe Green at. Middle linebacker, you have 2 guys, but I went with Lambert. But you also have Ham, and they played together, which is insane. And they were first-team All-Pros together.
Defense had what,
for
5
years.
Hall of Famers or 6?
I think it was 6.
Yeah.
But Jack Lambert. When you look between the 2, Lambert had the Defensive Player of the Year and the Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
The Pro Bowls were almost identical. I think Lambert had 1 more Pro Bowl and the same amount of all first-team All-Pros as Ham, and it was like 8. Okay. Yeah. Jack Lambert played 10 years in the league, 10 or 11 years, and the first 10 years he was a Pro Bowler. The last year he battled injuries and then he retired.
Yeah.
He's one of the greatest middle linebackers ever. Corner. I'll go safety first.
Well, are you holding off purposely on edge rusher?
I am holding off purposely on edge
just making
rusher.
sure.
Safety Troy Polamalu.
Yeah.
One of 5 safeties to ever win Defensive Player of the Year. One of, and we're going to talk about the other safety with the other team, one of the 2 best safeties of the 2000s.
Yeah.
Different types of safeties, though. Troy Polamalu was more of a meet you at the line of scrimmage. I mean, he was a strong safety versus free safety for the most part, and that's how he played. But one of the best safeties ever.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Corner, Rod Woodson. Shout out to Mel Blount, who was an undrafted corner who won Defensive Player of the Year in the 70s. One of those guys I talked about that won Defensive Player of the Year in that group of guys. But it's Rod Woodson, who also won the Defensive Player of the Year, who also had great years on other teams.
At safety,
after he left.
Except he was terrible on my team.
Yes, he played 1 year on the 49ers.
He was terrible.
He played he played on Baltimore.
And Raiders.
And the Raiders, right? And he played safety on the Raiders in Baltimore, I believe, right?
Yep.
The 49ers had him at corner still?
Yeah.
But Rod Woodson. And edge rusher, I'm going to shout out LC, but the answer is TJ Watt, which is unreal. So TJ Watt in the last, it's the last 5 years. Okay, so we already heard he's like the quickest to X amount of sacks in terms of games played. Every 10 sacks you go, he's the quickest to that number. In the last, I think it's 5 years, he's finished first or second in Defensive Player of the Year 4 or 5 times. The one time he didn't, he was hurt.
Yeah.
And he still had like 9 sacks.
He was on pace for like 25 sacks.
Yeah.
Like something like a crazy number.
Yeah. Which he probably wouldn't have kept up, but still. Then he got hurt, and then what's his name? Their other Highsmith ended up having a career and having like 14 sacks.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's TJ Watt.
Yeah.
He is in my opinion, right now he's the best defensive player in football. Because he not only rushes the passer, he plays the run well from the edge position. He forces turnovers. He forces fumbles. Even the pressures he gets on the quarterback, he forces interceptions. And they don't have as many good defensive players right now as some of the other elite defensive players. And so that's why I would put him as probably, and it's an argument, right? I mean, Aaron Donald did just retire too. Okay.
Yeah.
But it is an argument. It's hard to really quantify, is he better than this person or that person when they play different positions. But if I had to choose between him and Garrett, it would be tough. But I would probably choose TJ Watt because I think he is a more versatile defender than Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett does play the run well too, but TJ Watt can also drop into coverage.
Yeah.
It's not really what you want him to do, but he can. And in the Steelers defense, they do call him to do that sometimes. But those are my 5.
I think the last thing you said is a conversation. I'm considering it because I'm trying to think like who would be like in the top 3, top 5 defenders in that conversation. And it's crazy that
it's TJ Watt, Myles Garrett are the top 2 edge rushers year in and year out. There's other great ones
because if you're starting your defense, you're
and they're both relatively young.
I don't think neither one of them are 30. They're not 30 yet. But I mean, same exact ones. It's just
which is nuts because of how many great players Pittsburgh has had. I mean, look, Cam Hayward. like as a interior defensive lineman,
Yes.
he is. To me, I don't think he's going to end up making a Hall of Fame.
No.
And the reason he's not going to is because of the great defensive tackles that played during his era.
Or even
You know
if you
what
just
I mean?
look at like a
Because-
Greg Lloyd. Greg Lloyd was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's not Jack Lambert amazing,
Yeah.
but they've had Kevin Green, they've had Chad Brown.
Dude, Kevin
I'll tell you who
Green,
was a favorite of mine. He's not deserving this list, but Levon Kirkland was a 270-pound
Dude,
middle
James
linebacker.
Harrison at defense,
James
as edge
Harrison.
rusher. Lamar Woodley had some good years.
I mean,
man.
it's just it goes on and on.
Yeah.
It's like because again though they're a well-run organization
They are,
and they have a system.
They've had 3 head coaches
I know that's
in 50 years.
that's a crazy.
Well, I've seen when Chuck Noll started. I don't remember his first year, but at least since 1974. So that's at least for the last 50. Yeah, that's 50 years. They've had 3 coaches.
Yeah.
3.
Even look at now.
3.
He doesn't. I'm not saying like he's not close to Polamalu, but Mikael Fitzpatrick, right? Mika Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, he's a great.
He's amazing.
He's a good safety.
Like the Steelers always end up with these guys who are just it could be interior defensive line, pass rushers.
Dude, T.J. Watt was like
all
the
of them.
30th pick of the draft, dude.
He was
20 something.
He was. I think he was like teens or 20s, but it was like he
He was
wasn't.
a mid to late first round pick.
Because I mean, they're Steelers. They don't draft early in the draft, you know. So all these guys that they get are either late first round picks or they're in the second, third round, things of that nature.
Troy Polamalu was a second round pick, I think.
He was
Or
late
was he
first.
late
He was
first?
late first. Very.
But he
late
didn't
first.
play much his rookie year. He wasn't their starting safety the rookie year.
No, because I think then they had. Who did they have? I know Ryan Clark.
No,
Ryan
Clark
was
played
a free
with
safety. He was a free safety.
Polamalu.
I know. I'm just trying to like workshop it in my head.
Yeah,
It could have been
I
a
don't know.
strong safety.
Man, it was
I'm not sure,
20 years ago.
but they've always had like that. Was it 09 their defense when they won the Super Bowl against the Cardinals?
Yeah, James Harrison had that pick 6.
defense
Remember
was
it? 99-yard running back.
Yeah. So it's okay. So now we go to the Ravens now.
Mm.
We expand on the awesomeness, right? The Ravens. Let's see, middle linebacker. Who am I going to choose? Patrick Queen? No, Ray Lewis.
First of all, Roquan Smith would be above Patrick Queen, bro.
I know. Who Patrick Queen is now
Roquan Queen got him that contract. Look at Patrick Queen's played before and after Roquan went there.
Yeah.
Roquan's the best middle linebacker in football right now, in my opinion.
No.
Overall middle linebacker.
No.
Yeah, sorry, Fred Warner.
No,
Yeah.
Fred has it.
No.
Watch 2 Niner games and then, but anyway, so Ray Lewis and then the guy who we talked about Vince Wilfork, and we talked about, and it's funny how many times we talk about how freaky these guys are. Like we talked about as freaky as Myles Garrett is. Haloi Nada is Haloi Nada was like 340 pounds.
Yeah.
I think he played running back in high school, a little bit of running back.
Probably fullback, but yeah.
He has no body fat. I think they said he could do backflips. He was
freakishly
a freak athlete. Terrell Suggs. So I was asked the edge rusher.
Still has the record for sacks in a college season.
Yeah,
20,
yeah.
20.
I think 24 was it?
It was in 24.
Are you sure?
No, because they only played 12 games.
Yeah,
13 games with a bowl game.
that's true.
Think about that. They play up to 15 now and still no one's broke it. That's impressive.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah, no, you're right about that. Yeah, Arizona State.
Hall of Famer. Will be Hall of Famer.
Chris McAllister at corner.
Mm-hmm.
And then, to me, who is, I say, between him and Ronnie Lott, the greatest two safeties ever, Ed Reed. Mm-hmm. And I love hearing Bill Belichick talk about Ed Reed is like hearing somebody talk about their first love. Like he talks, it is not just him. If you hear the greats talk about Ed Reed, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, all these guys, and they talk about how they had to study him. They talk about him with such reference that it's like, it's amazing. I love hearing great players talk about other great players, and you can tell where the respect lies. You can tell when the masses think somebody's great, and you can tell when other great players don't really think he's great, he's kind of overrated. Mm-hmm. When they talk about Ed Reed, they talk about him with such a high esteem. He was an intelligent player. He had heart. He could hit. Now, he wasn't Palomalu. Like, he wasn't, because he just wasn't as thick as him. He was a different type of player. That was his game. But he could hit. But he was
more of a ball hawk.
Oh, he was there. I challenge everybody to look this play up. There's a play against Peyton Manning where he drops back in coverage and he purposely goes towards the right, like more towards the middle of the field, and he's doing it to bait Peyton Manning because he knows that if Peyton Manning sees him going to a certain direction of the field, he's going to throw a certain. And as soon as he sees the ball leave his hand, he turns back around and turns towards the other way and intercepts the ball. I know
the play time.
But Ed Reed is put like this. Controversial. Ed Reed is the Ravens' best defensive player of all time. Ray Lewis is the heart of what you think about when you think about the Ravens. Ed Reed is their best defender, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think one way to look at that too is again, I mean, Ray Lewis was the best middle linebacker of that era. Ed Reed was the best safety. The gap between Ray Lewis and Zach Thomas or Ray Lewis and Brian Urlacher is probably closer than Ed Reed and Palomalu. Yeah. And Palomalu is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yes. And again, 2001 Miami. I mean, look at that. Come on.
Yes.
That team was.
Yeah. But I had the same five. Yeah. I mean, the only one where I was like maybe I could switch was corner with Marlon Humphrey. If Humphrey stays and continues to be productive, he takes that spot. Because Ed Reed's a Hall of Famer already. So is Ray Lewis. Yeah. Terrell Suggs will be. Haloti Ngata probably won't make it because I don't think he had a long enough career.
And he doesn't have the counting stats.
Yeah.
You know,
but even then, you know, he doesn't have the counting stats, but he has the accolades, right? So he does have the Pro Bowls, he does have the All Pros, but I don't think he had a long enough career to where he'll get in. But his peak was, I mean, he was again in that argument for best defensive tackle in the league at that time.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying about saying Ed Reed is the best defender. I mean, it's hard to argue that. Yes, Ray Lewis was the heart and soul. He was the leader. Yeah. He was the voice. Ray Lewis got you pumped. Yeah. You know, Ed Reed was quiet. Yeah. Really. I mean, Ed Reed just went about his business, did his job. Now, granted, in the locker room he could have been different, but
I've seen stuff that he was a little different.
What you see as a fan, right? I mean, Ray Lewis doing a little dance, I mean, he was the one giving the pregame speeches. You know, he made a lot of big play. Obviously, he made the big tackles and stuff like that. I remember Eddie George was scared to death of that man. I remember one play in the playoffs. The Titans, Eddie George was running, and he sees Ray Lewis. He runs out of bounds.
No, but that play
and Ray Lewis was just talking to. Yeah, it was after that.
Yes.
From that point on, Eddie George saw Ray Lewis and said, "I want none of that smoke."
And I think was this the next drive where he got that interception?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he was. Yeah, but Ray Lewis was a very smart player too, and that's why the defense was so good. You had a middle linebacker that controlled the front seven.
Yes.
And you had a safety that controlled the back. And both of them were as smart of a player at their position that there's ever been.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you hear Ray Lewis, you know, and talk to Peyton when he was on Manningcast stuff, and it's great.
Yes.
Because the respect those two have for each other, because Peyton Manning has never been considered, and will never be considered in terms of physical tools, the best quarterback. No. He's considered one of the all-time greats because of his mind. And you see his forehead, you know why. You know, but he is an extremely intelligent quarterback. The reason the Broncos won Super Bowl 50 is their defense, and they had a quarterback that was smart. Yeah. Peyton Manning couldn't throw the ball 15 yards downfield, and they still won the Super Bowl. Think about that for a second. Yeah. That's how smart he was. The other team knew he couldn't throw the ball, but he was still able to not turn the ball over and to get enough points to win games for that defense. Yeah. So, but when you hear them talk to each other, it's fantastic because they understand the game so much. Yes. And the level of respect they have for each other, and then of course they had those battles with each other too. They used to be in the same division prior to 2002, once the Texans joined. So, I mean, Baltimore was a pretty easy one too, though. I mean, to me though, Pittsburgh. You have 5 Hall of Famers on Pittsburgh, and we left Hall of Famers off.
tons.
That's how good their defense has been over the years. And it's not even like, oh, they're French Hall of Famers. Like, no, they were legit. Look, all 5 of those guys won a Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
They're the only team, and I think we haven't done NFC yet, but when we get to the NFC, I think it's going to be the same thing. Pittsburgh's the only one that every single position had a Defensive Player of the Year, and we still had guys that left off that won Defensive Players of the Year.
But if you look at both these organizations, they both
they're run extremely well. Ozzie Newsome was a very underrated GM.
Yeah.
He's a Hall of Fame tight end. He's a Hall of Fame GM, and he will make it as that, I think. I mean, but Pittsburgh is one of those teams. To me, if I played football, I would want to play for that team. I would want to play for that franchise. You know what I mean? Like, it is just run well. You know
you're going to be put in the best position to succeed.
You know you're going to have stability, and you're going to be successful, because an unsuccessful season for them is 500.
Yep.
And when you're that good, that's a bad season. You're never rebuilding.
Correct.
You know, so that takes to the end of episode 3, part 2. Next, we're going to dive into the NFC for episode 4. We hope you join us then. Thank you.